Patricia White's $30,000 hollow victory. Patricia White may sit in the big chair today, but let's be blunt, more people voted against her than for her. She pulled in 30,796 votes, enough to win, but the other two candidates combined had 35,278 votes. That's 4,482 more people who wanted anyone but Patricia White. And here's the kicker. This is after she has spent tens of thousands more than any other councillor on travel, conferences and phone calls. In just 1 year she blew $28,713 on travel, $5,829 on conferences, $943 on phone calls, plus extras that left her $30,537 above the average councillor. Let's have the presentation run through the details.
How can someone win an election but have that victory called hollow? It sounds like a contradiction, right? Well, today we're jumping into an analysis of Mayor Patricia White's recent win to see exactly why the source material argues her victory might not have been the triumph it seemed. Okay, let's get right to the heart of it with the single most explosive claim from the source. The author says, flat out, that more people actually voted against Mayor White than for her. So how on earth can a winning candidate technically lose the popular vote? That's the big question we're going to unpack.
To get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the basics. We're going to look at the election purely by the numbers. Let's break down that official vote count.
So, first up, here's the winning number. Patricia White got 30,796 votes. As the candidate with the most votes, this is the number that officially put her in the mayor's office. Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, here's where it gets interesting. If you take all the votes for every other candidate and add them up, you get this, 35,278. That number is quite a bit bigger, and it's the entire foundation for the author's argument. And you can really see what the source is getting at in this chart. That blue bar, that's the votes for Patricia White. But look at the red bar right next to it. That's all the combined votes against her. This visual is designed to make a really powerful point, that the anti-white vote was in fact stronger than the pro-white vote. And it really all comes down to this number right here, 4,482. That's what the source calls the vote deficit. Think about it. According to this analysis, almost 4,500 more people went into a voting booth and chose someone, literally anyone else, other than the person who ended up winning.
But believe it or not, the vote count is only half of this story. The analysis argues that if you really want to understand how this happened, you have to follow the money. It draws a direct line from this election result to a history of her spending.
So, the source pulls up Patricia White's expense claims from just 1 year when she was a councillor. It points out over $28,000 spent on travel, nearly $6,000 on conferences, and just under $1,000 on phone calls.
But then the analysis takes it a step further. It calculates how much more White spent compared to the average councillor. And the result is pretty eye-popping, an excess spend of over $30,000. For comparison, the average councillor by definition has an excess spend of $0.
And here it is, laid out visually. The source puts White's excess spending, that massive orange bar, right next to the flat $0 average for her colleagues. The contrast is really stark, and it's the second major piece of evidence in this whole argument. So, we have the election numbers on one hand and the expense claims on the other. How do these two things actually come together? Well, this next part details the author's central argument, connecting those dollars directly to the votes. The author ties these two ideas together with a really simple, powerful calculation. They take her excess spending, that $30,000 plus figure, and they divide it by her vote total of just over $30,000. And what they land on is the core thesis of this entire analysis. Her victory cost roughly $1 of public money for every single vote she got. All right, so with all this data now on the table, the vote deficit on one side, the spending surplus on the other, what's the author's final take? According to them, what does all of this actually imply? To set up their conclusion, the source points to her long career. Patricia White was first elected to the council way back in 2012. The implication here is that after more than a decade in public office, this particular election result deserves a closer look. Now, the author uses this very specific phrase to describe her win, a wafer-thin mandate. You hear this in politics sometimes. It's basically a term for a victory that doesn't have that broad, enthusiastic backing from a clear majority of voters, which is exactly the point the author is trying to make with all that vote data.
And this all builds to the author's final, very sharp conclusion. It's really important to note that they frame this as their personal take, saying, "In my personal opinion, that's not leadership. It's expensive self-promotion at the public's expense."
And so, that's where we're left, with the central question posed by this analysis. Based on the numbers presented, the source is essentially asking us to consider, does this look like earned leadership, or does it look more like expensive self-promotion? The analysis presents its evidence, but leaves that final judgment up to you.
That kind of spending should buy influence, connection, and trust. Instead, it bought her the kind of victory you can only call hollow, a throne without majority support, built on a mountain of ratepayer-funded travel claims. Dollars vs votes. Let's do the maths. White's excess spending works out at roughly $1 per vote, not $1 from her pocket, $1 from yours. And yet, even with all that public money poured into visibility, the majority of voters still didn't want her as mayor. Why it matters. Patricia White has been in council since 2012. After more than a decade in office and more money claimed than anyone else, nearly $500,000, it's fair to ask, where are the results? Where are the achievements that justify this level of entitlement? Instead, we're left with the picture of a mayor whose allowances tower over her peers, but whose electoral mandate is wafer thin. In my personal opinion, that's not leadership. It's expensive self-promotion at the public's expense. This is why, in my personal opinion, the mayor has lost control of the council and abandoned any real strategic direction. In my opinion, she is cunning, but not at all smart or capable. It is not hard to run around to every meeting, to every person who calls the office, make a list, nod your head, and then ride off into the sun. And you get paid for each KM. Why not maximise the travel, more money, more exposure? It works even better where you find self-obsessed, extreme views. The tree removal people, the dogs on beach people who do not believe in the rule of law, but the rule of numbers. Each council meeting is dominated by minor operational distractions, while suspected breaches of the code of conduct go unchecked, and her ongoing high use of travel allowances continues without scrutiny. Her block delays or diverts core issues into private briefings or closed-door committees, leaving the community in the dark. Add to this her openly biased chairing of the chamber, and it is no surprise that public confidence in her leadership has collapsed.
On the council, truth to life.